What an exciting time to be an Australian. One of our recent Prime Ministers said that, Malcolm Turnbull. He was, I think, the 6th Prime Minister we had in 7 years or something like that. He said that. He said it's a wonderful time to be in Australia, and I'm excited. We've had a huge week here in Australia. Malcolm Turnbull, he was I'll come back to Malcolm Turnbull in a sec. So just to recap what's happened here in Australia this week, on Tuesday, I think it was, we had the grand announcement that we're getting a space agency. So I look forward to $41 million, I think it was. We're going to spend, I think it was a year, we're going to spend on this space agency. So I look forward to the very best cartoonists in Australia giving us their, their impressions of what this make-believe space place is going to look like, as we get the very best cartoons of their thoughts on what it is. It's clearly not real, but I don't know, $41 million a year. It's nothing but America's budget, I suppose. But the grand news, oh, drum roll, the biggest news of them all. Oh, listen to this one. Australia's moving their embassy to Jerusalem just like America. Isn't that a surprise? We're doing what America did. Now, all this, and it's dreadful news. It's dreadful news because we all know what Israel is, and I'll get to that in a minute. So I've had a bit of a look at the history of Australia and our prime ministers. Now, when you wake up, I've been awake now for about 2 years. When you find out, all the other countries, America, I firmly believe America is the modern day Babylon. It's the playground. It fell a long time ago, as did England. England is, I think, even more vile than America. I mean, you look at that Jimmy Savile stuff. They were all complicit. How do you get a photograph with Margaret Thatcher when you're a rampant pedophile? And people just don't add this shit up. It's because they were complicit. I saw on a documentary the other day that Jimmy Savile was the one who supplied all the little boys for the politicians, and that's why he was allowed to get away with it, because he was complicit in it. He was supplying the little boys, and that's the higher echelons of England, and it's obviously run by the royals. And then you look at places like France; they've obviously fallen, as has Canada, and all of these so-called Western countries. They've all fallen by the wayside a long time ago. Were they ever any different? I don't know. America was obviously built on Freemasonry. England appears to have been built on this royal shit, and Australia was built on the coattails of the UK. So I've just had a quick look. It doesn't take much when you're awake, does it, to learn stuff, because Google just tells you it all. I just had a quick look. The Australian Prime Ministers who have been Freemasons, and it looks like most of them are. They're all bloody Freemasons. So we're in on it as well. So let's have a look at what's going on in Australia right now. So we've got a new Prime Minister. His name's Scott Morrison, who professes to be a Christian. Okay, so I said in a video the other day, his Christian beliefs are that he goes to Hillsong Church. And we all know Hillsong Church is satanistic. It's run by Satanists, it's run by pedophiles, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with God. So this Prime Minister, who professes to follow Christ, Christian, does that mean you follow Christ? Is that what a Christian is? I don't know. I don't consider myself a Christian. I'm just in the body of Christ. If that makes me a Christian, well, so be it. I don't know. But I'm just in the body of Christ. I'm within that temple, good and proper. But this bloke, he professes to be a Christian. He goes to Hillsong Church. He allocates $41 million a year for a space agency, for something that just doesn't exist. And now he's going to move this embassy to Jerusalem, which is Palestinian land. So I've got to ask. I really want to ask this question because the Jews fascinate me. So it's known in the Bible that the Israelites, which I suppose are the Jews, are the children of God. But the Old Testament says it over and over again that the Jews lost their way, that they needed physical evidence of God. God was providing miracles. He led them out of Egypt. He continuously led them out of bondage, but they didn't believe him, so he continuously punished them. And then he'd go, okay, after 40 years, let's try again. But no, they would continuously worship cows and worship beasts, as they do today. And then basically in the end, their physical evidence arrived in the form of Christ, and they killed him. And now they reject Christ because it goes against, I don't know, their beliefs. but the only beliefs is Jesus and God. So if I'm off the mark with that story, please somebody let me know. Now the other thing that I'm thinking at the moment as well is that those of us who are within the body of Christ, we are, people are going to hate this and I hate saying it, we are actually the Israelites. We are actually the Jews he talked about in the Old Testament. We are the chosen people. And the difference is that anybody can join us in the body of Christ whenever they want. Come aboard. I talk to people all the time. It's like, well, I was talking to a guy the other day and he said, I don't believe in God. And I said, well, why don't you believe in God? He said, because the world's so evil. I said, well, can evil survive? Can evil exist without good? And he's like, And then I started, and he's like, I said to this bloke, I'll go off in a tangent a little bit. I said to this bloke, I said, why is the sky blue? And he said, oh, it's because of reflection off the water. And I said, well, why isn't it brown or green when you're in the middle of Afghanistan? And he looked at me and he went, and I went, yeah. And Genesis 1 to 10, guys, it is a kicker. So if you're ever talking flat earth to people, or you're talking about Christ or creation or God or whatever, just go to those first 10 verses of the Bible and it's all there. It says it, it's accurate. It says there's two bodies of water, there's a firmament, and you look at the sky, that's exactly what you see. The Bible stands up every single time. But anyway, it makes me so... We are now those of us within the body of Christ. For mine, we are the elect. We are God's chosen people. And if you're see Australia's policy here, Australia's policy is the two-state solution. So Australia's fascinating for me at the moment because we're obviously in bed. We're obviously in bed with Israel. We're in bed with America, which means we are the bad guys. But yet we don't seem to be in as full on because we're not saying, I don't know, what's America's policy on Israel? Is it get out Palestine and Israel? Or are they two-state solution as well? This Australia's all two-state solution. Which is really on the fence, isn't it? I mean, the only solution is for Israel just to fuck off and give it back to Palestine because Israel was built on a false premise, World War II, which was all just one gigantic hoax. The whole thing happened, the whole World War II happened absolutely, but the whole thing was just done on an absolute hoax. There was no Holocaust. The Jews were never the victim. They're not the most persecuted race in the history of the world. It's just all bullshit. They are the thug in the playground, the Jews. So you remember in school where you'd get, little Jimmy would hit you on the head and you'd have a bit of a cry and you go and dob to the teacher. And then Jimmy would spin a yarn and, you'd be the one in the shit. That's exactly what Jews are. They're not persecuted. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it 1 minute. So where are Australia in all this? So it's been interesting because in Australia, we've got our parties is basically, it's a two-party system. We've got Liberal and Labor, but then we've got some fringe parties. And one of those fringe parties is the Greens. And the Greens are extreme left, and the Greens are split in two different parts. You've got the environmental Greens and then you've got the political Greens. And the political Greens, they're communists. They're watermelons to the core. And there's one lady by the name of, I'll use the name lady very, very loosely, by the name of Lee Rhiannon. And she's really interesting because she would be the most left politician here in Australia. And she despises Israel. She's on record a few times talking about her disdain for Israel, but yet she's on the extreme left. And yet the social agenda that's being pushed here in Australia and the Western world is very lefty, very, very, very socially, politically correct, and abortions has to be, and the trans agenda and the gay agenda, and you can't say anything, everything has to be appropriate, and fuck that, I'm not, and that's probably why I'm always getting in trouble. But that's the agenda being pushed, which is the exact agenda from the Greens, but yet this lady speaks out about from the Greens, from Israel, speaks out from the Greens about Israel. So that's confusing in itself. There was one other politician, his name was Bob Carr. He was a New South Wales Premier there for a while. And then he was the Australian Foreign Minister. And he a few times was quite outspoken on Israel. But to my knowledge, they're really the only two. So how deep does Australia go? I think we're in it boots and all. We're in it absolutely boots and all. which is depressing. But you know, when you're following Christ, it's unbelievable, this Christ stuff, isn't it? It's like he said it in Matthew. He said, "I'm not of this world," and that's how it's starting to feel. It's just, you see it and you just feel this immunity to it, and it's like you're not here. It's just weird, and it's sensational. I'm in a stage now where I've been saved for about 6 months, and I'm hearing God talk to me. I'm hearing Jesus talk to me. My prayers are being answered. And I don't pray for material things. I pray for things like, God, how do you want to use me? This sort of doesn't make sense. Help this make sense to me, because I just want to serve you. And I just want to, I want to minister. I just want to minister to people and tell people how great God and Jesus are. And that's happening. I just find now I'm not looking for opportunity, but I'm just finding it's opening up to me. Like this bloke the other day, he just out with it. He come out with it, and he just said, "I don't like Jews." And I went, "What?" And he said, and then the conversation just continued, and he said, "You know, I don't believe in God," and on we went. And I'm finding these conversations are happening more and more. I'm finding people are being attracted to me that are different types of people than before. It's all really, really interesting. But yeah, just to recap, so this week we've had the big news of a $41 million a year space agency for space that simply doesn't exist. We're moving that embassy to Israel because we are on our knees looking to pleasure America, who are on their knees looking to pleasure Israel, and Israel run the world in the name of Satan. And the only way out, guys, as I always say just about every video, is through the blood of the Lamb.